Yeah, we've had a lot of people waiting for visas that we're trying to hire.
Yep.
It's like 3 months.
Some of them it's been like 5 months. It's crazy.
Yeah.
UK Home Office. What's up?
Way to go.
Get a move on.
Buenas a todos, chavales. Otro viernes más con el Star Citizen Live. Que en este caso pues es el Actual Feature Team.
I'll go home now. Oh, I am home.
Right here. I'm going to do the title screen. Here we go. Here's the title screen.
Hello everyone. My name is Jared Hackley.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Live, the Active Feature Team Q&A. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. And if you've... Yes, I hesitated on my own name. It's that kind of morning. If you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of our day at the end of the week and let Jeremiah destroy what's left of our toys.
How many did he break?
Oh, man. It's not how many. It's that he somehow managed to zoom in on like the most expensive ones and just grind them. There was literally dust falling in the frame as he was destroying. He's completely oblivious to it. But that was last week. This is this week. Joining us here today are people who know how to respect toys. The Active Feature Team. Johnny DeCivius.
Hello.
Chris Perry. Joas.
Yo.
And as I said that, I got really nervous about my pronunciation. Am I still destroying your name, Johnny?
Say it again. My full name.
Oh gosh,
Not
John
that
DeCivius.
No, it's not. You're not quite there. It's Eusebius.
No.
That's how I say it anyway.
It's what?
Eusebius.
Eusebius?
So there's going to be a little arrow on top of the C. The ch.
I've been nowhere close. Okay. Now you guys just let me do it. You guys are supposed to. I'm never going to get
people
better.
at the company that can pronounce it is Rich, and that's because he asked me how to say it for about a month every day straight. He would turn to me and say, "How do I say your name?"
All right.
Paid off.
Well, today's show is about active feature stuff. Now, active feature stuff, it might not active feature team or otherwise known core gameplay, I suppose. Things that are related to the physical, to the player character, basically. Why am I explaining it, Johnny? You explain it. What the hell do you do?
Core gameplay team do quite a lot now. So it kind of spread out from the active feature team. It encompassed the weapon feature team as well, and we're obviously working a lot more with things like the UI teams now, like and other teams like that too. So active features, like you say, is everything to do with the player character. So if that's eating, drinking, breathing, running, climbing.
Que nos están explicando lo que es el Actual Feature Team, que es si es disparar, comer, beber. Cualquier cosa que tenga que ver con el personaje, ¿no?
My team, we're even helping iterate on things like the Moby Glass and improving things like that too. So anything that's there potentially in front of your face, anything that you're doing in the game while you're kind of not in a ship is kind of
Claro, cualquier cosa que estés haciendo en una nave que no sea, o sea, cualquier cosa que estés haciendo que no sea potencialmente en una nave o que no sea en una nave, pues que se relaciona con el personaje y tal, es del Actual Feature Team.
What the hell is this pile of shame behind him? Who are you talking? Which one? You got to be more specific, Max. Which one's the pile of shame? I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're gonna give crap to my people, you gotta direct it specifically. All right. So, as we are wont to do, we put a thread up on Spectrum earlier in this week where we collected questions to start the show off. You can also submit your questions live during the show with the word "question" in capital letters surrounded by brackets. It's going to help me pull it out from the other thing. Oh, the unpainted Warhammers. Oh, he's definitely talking about Johnny.
I knew who they were talking about.
Can we zoom in there? Get out of the way of your unpainted Warhammers here.
This is a very limited shot. I've raised my desk so you can't see the rest of it. Let's just hide that now.
All right. So let's jump into the show. We've goofed off enough. one of the most voted up questions is a recurring question that comes back to us ever so often. Holsters for civilian clothing.
Fundas para llevar las armas, ¿no? Fundas para llevar las armas, para llevar la ropa, para no tener que llevar armadura. ¿Qué nos puedes decir de eso?
Potential future of just rocking the Han Solo kind of thing in plain clothes.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we 100% want to do. We've benefited so far from a lot of the armor pieces and undersuits of basically having like magnetic tech that's like letting you just like pop things on there, you know, like little mag plates and stuff to kind of justify that why you've got a weapon on your back and why it's just kind of like stuck to you. But that's a lot more difficult with things like clothing, and we know long term that we want clothing to have more functionality. And what I mean by that is it's not just something that's cosmetic for you to run around in a landing zone in. We know that as more and more content gets put onto the planets, people want to spend more time there and, you know, potentially spend nearly all of their time there. So a lot of the time you don't want to spend, I mean, like, it's not much of a concern right now, but, you know, you don't want to spend the money, you don't want to, you know, buy an undersuit and upkeep it and the armor and all of that stuff. You want to, and to be honest, some of the clothing looks cooler as well, that you might kind of want to kind of skew into that style. So you don't want to always be wearing that kind of like, you know, skin tight undersuit. So we want to be able to have armor that potentially has, you know, like additional protection. So I think none of the clothing right now actually has, you know, protection values on.
Claro, está diciendo de que el día de mañana no, para esa gente, bueno, para estar en una landing zone, que no simplemente tengamos que llevar la ropa por una cuestión estética, sino que sea por otras cosas. También es el hecho de que en el caso de las armaduras podemos justificarlo con que hay una tecnología magnética para justificar que se puede llevar lo que es el arma ahí medio tala y medio suelta y tal. Pero que eso en la ropa es algo más complicado de hacer. Pero definitivamente es algo que quieren hacer, el hecho de que se puedan llevar armas y demás. No solo eso, sino también extender la funcionalidad de lo que es la ropa en sí y poder llevar armaduras que no... o sea, poder llevar protección que sea de ropa y no que sea la mítica armadura que ponemos encima del undersuit, ¿no?
Get it, you know, a sustainable solution while still making it look pretty good. And I don't want to write any checks for them. So, you know, if you get a chance to talk to them in future, that would be a good question for them as well. But from the design point of view, you know, that's something that we really want to push on going forward.
Right from the live chat, how come there haven't been any new FPS weapons in a while?
So,
¿Y por qué no ha habido armas en primera persona desde hace un tiempo?
get a base set of FPS weapons out there that kind of gave people a good variety of weapons to play with. And I feel like we've got most of the way there with that. We've kind of filled out a lot of the Class and Werner, the Bearing, Gemini weapons. I think there's only one or two that we still need to actually get out there. But because I've read Spectrum, I know there's a couple of questions about certain related things later that we might get to. But, you know, we've been working on things like FPS devices, and we've got weapons in the pipeline that have required a bit more engineering work because they have a bit more special functionality. So that's the reason. We're kind of now skewing into more unique things.
Me parece que ahora mismo están, que el motivo de que haya armas nuevas es porque ahora mismo están investigando nuevos territorios de armas con funcionalidades diferentes.
Many folks that your team is one of the teams that have switched their focus to Squadron 42.
Yes.
Your work is still coming to the PU. It's just filtering through Squadron 42 first. So a lot of your priorities will be things that are must-haves for Squadron and stuff like that. So, Jared, can you please sing something for us today? No, that's only when Jeremiah's not breaking my toys. Utiliflex Novia Crossbow. Where is it?
¿Y qué pasa con la ballesta? ¿Dónde está?
That's one of those kind of weapons that I just mentioned that requires a bit more.
Claro, parece que esa dice que es una de las armas que comentaban que querían que necesitaban un desarrollo de tecnología más amplio.
As well, that expanding on the typical weapon behavior that we've got, and while, you know, it's just a crossbow, it just fires a bolt and it's nice and easy. Obviously, there are kind of what's the word I'm missing? Implications there. Yeah, implications there of that require our team and other teams to kind of chip in on to actually get working. So it's not gone away, but, you know, it's on the horizon. Sorry, Jose.
Yeah, like
Okay.
something like with the crossbow, you know, like in any game, you expect to shoot the crossbow bolt, and then that sticks to surfaces and it sticks to people, and so on. So that requires like the physics team to.
Claro, dice que cuando disparemos la ballesta se espera de que eso se clave en un notario, o se clave a las cosas, ¿no? Entonces, que necesitan el apoyo de otras personas, ¿no? De otros equipos de trabajo para poder sacarlo adelante. Que está ahí en ello, están en ello, pero que hay que esperar un poco, ¿no? Para que salga. De la ballesta estamos
I'm
hablando.
gonna remember all of these.
But yeah, as you mentioned, like the vault weapon, for instance, like the parallax rifle, that's one of those weapons. Like speaking of hotter fish, that's quite cool in the way that it's got a evolving fire mode. So it's gonna start out being like a projectile shooting weapon as you start firing. It will then evolve into a beam. So it'll start out with a tug, 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 where you have the beam, and it also has the potential or the potential for overheating. So that is something that's coming, but yeah.
Yeah, again, more engineering work.
Vale, estaban hablando de unas armas que van a llegar y tal, el Parallax Rifle o algo así, que es en plan que va disparando boom, boom, boom y que luego se convierte en un rayo y tal. O sea, no sé.
Falling onto their side.
O sea, cosas locas que están por llegar, parece ser, para las armas.
Volley over and you're done.
So yeah, we absolutely have plans for improving trolleys, and you know, it's not just tipping them on their side. It's also, we know that people want and we want hover trolleys, so that's absolutely something that we want to look at some point. When that happens, though, yeah, it's a little bit further down the road, unfortunately. I apologize for the trolley woes.
Give trolley.
Los carritos y tal que están un poquito más adelante, que todavía no hay funcionalidad. Todavía no hay funcionalidad a corto plazo para los carritos.
Ties in, I guess, a little bit to what I was talking about earlier with the, you know, more functional clothing. We've talked about the possibility of maybe having an undersuit backpack as well, which would be a little bit easier to do. But I think, again, it's that expectation of when you've got armor, it's kind of, you know, you can justify attaching something to it without having lots of physical straps and things like that because, you know, it's a bit higher tech than like regular clothing, right? So it's a bit more difficult with clothing because you've got to factor in, you know, I've got straps going over my shoulder. Okay, what if I'm wearing a t-shirt? What if I'm wearing a hoodie? What if I'm wearing a jacket? What if I'm wearing, you know, a robe or something like that you might see in somewhere like Pyro?
Claro, están preguntándole sobre la posibilidad de las mochilas sin necesidad de armadura y comentan lo mismo que con los holsters, ¿no? Las fundas de armas. Que, a ver, sabéis que esta Citizen pretende la fidelidad y tiene que ser creíble, entonces no quieren que haya una mochila volante ahí por la cara, porque tienen que llevar cinchas, tiene que ir eso amoldado al cuerpo, depende de si llevas una chaqueta, si llevas una camiseta, si llevas tal. O sea que son niveles de tecnología alto nivel de tecnología que tienen que desarrollar e investigar, pero que es algo que quieren hacer.
Here's another hot one. This one's from our greatest hits here. What is the priority for parachutes or anything at all?
Paracaídas, cualquier cosa, lo que sea.
Anything that can allow players to survive an ejection in atmosphere.
Claro, cualquier cosa que ayude a sobrevivir
parachutes
una
sounds
eyección.
Nice. Like as we're adding more gameplay and stuff to do on planets, like we're expecting to have more dogfights and so on planets. So absolutely, you need to be able to jump out of, like bail out of your ship and survive the fall and not just fall to your death. So it's something that we want to do, and it needs designing, from our point.
Vale, en resumidas cuentas, es algo que definitivamente quieren hacer, algo que te permita sobrevivir a una caída cuando esté en atmósfera, especialmente que ahora va a haber una tendencia a que haya más dogfight en atmósfera y que necesita diseño técnico, o sea, diseño por su parte, ¿no? O sea, que no tienen hecho nada, básicamente. No tienen hecho nada, pero que lo quieren hacer.
oh, like a Banu hover bike, like this, there's a couple of other really cool things, and then parachute. And I was like, let me just look at the results. Parachute was like 90%, and so it's like, oh wow, you guys really want a parachute. So, yeah, that's something that we'll be, looking at adding in the future. But like Joe said, it's just no timeline on it right now.
Should make people choose between a parachute and a compass. I think compass would probably still win. All right. Here's a very simple question, Chris. How will FPS scanning work? Just lay it out.
¿Cómo funcionará el escáner de FPS?
Yeah.
No visuals.
Answer,
This isn't the visual show. So do it. Tell us what you can without any visuals.
Sure. So, I mean, to start off with, it's good to mention that it's going to be the same system we have now for ships. In that we have what we call a signature system that's like driving, radar, and scanning. So the fundamentals are the same across both, and the idea there is that they absolutely cross-pollinate. So ships should be able to pick up actors, characters will be able to pick up ships, that kind of thing. It is somewhat different in terms of like passive detection and we describe as active detection. So if you're in a ship, you pick things up just passively by flying around, IR, EM. With the FPS side of things, it's going to be passive for audio. So if people are firing weapons, you hear footsteps, that kind of thing, that gets picked up. But you're going to have to actively choose the ping to detect EM and IR. We think that's going to sort of give quite a different sort of cadence and feel to it. For actual like scanning though, for getting information on things, the idea is that you can absolutely scan ships. So when you're scanning the ship onto something else or another ship, you'll get a similar experience in the FPS, and that's going to be on the helmet. So you won't have dedicated like device.
A ver, estoy distraído, me tenéis que disculpar porque estoy distraído porque tiene el micro casi que pegado al labio, tío, ahí como si fuera un piloto, todo flipado el pobre hombre. Y se le escucha súper raro. Pero aparte de eso está diciendo de que como que pues lo que ya sabemos, ¿no? Que el radar irá por sonido y demás. Y que como que habrá que seleccionar activamente la función de poder escanear la señal de las naves, la señal electromagnética.
Obviously, active status and whatnot, we want to provide information. So if someone's down or bleeding, you can maybe find that out from range. Yeah, there's lots of cool things coming from it. We've got some sort of quite big changes to radar and scanning in general as well that's going to be rolling out with FPS. We can't really talk about it just yet, but that's all going to be using the same underlying system, as in with the signatures, but the interface to it is getting a bit of an overhaul, and that's for both FPS and ships. So hopefully more of that soon, but not yet, unfortunately.
And because things being diegetic in the universe is always a big concern for our game, what about when you're not wearing a helmet?
So there will be the lens, but the idea there is that they're sort of quite high-tech and expensive, so you won't necessarily be going out and buying them from your local supermarket, or that's going to be high-end tech that you have to pay quite a bit for. So helmet is going to be the primary method for quite some time. There are some things that utilize the signature system. So for example, we've got like the mining, you've got the tool that's using signature to find resources and whatnot. So there are other devices that use the underlying system, but in terms of like, the core gameplay loop, it's going to be helmet based.
Está comentando de que las lentillas, de alguna manera, el tema está en que las lentes que serán... ¿Qué pasa si vamos sin casco, no? Que las lentes serán una alternativa para escanear sin casco, pero que como que va a ser algo caro de conseguir lentes que tengan esa tecnología dentro del juego, y que principalmente se utilizará el casco sin man, ¿no? No sé si tendrá funciones disminuidas y más, pero...
Switch gears here a little bit. Considering the importance of hunger and thirst in the PU today, and going forward, combined with the detailed bathrooms in-game, is there still a plan to have players use the restrooms as a required part of the gameplay? Is it going to be in for RP purposes, or just to have bathrooms exist for immersion? I see you, Astropub. Although you weren't the only one to ask this question. There was a not surprising number of when can we use the toilet questions.
So bathrooms. So yeah, bathrooms. So like you're talking about like toilets and stuff. Then the idea is that yes, they're eventually going to be functional, but we've not talked about any associated gameplay surrounding them like at all yet. So you know, we're not trying to make Star Citizen into The Sims. Like you're not going to have to worry about your bladder meter or anything like that, or at least that's not the plan. But something that just because you say bathroom, and this is just the UK showing in me that you'll have to get used to, Jared, but it makes me think of showers because in the UK, bathrooms in the UK have a shower in or a bath. But that kind of.
Oh, I'm positive this question included using the shower.
Okay. Oh, cool. Well, that's all right then. So, yeah, hygiene is going to be a part of one of the next iterations of the actor status.
Vale, están hablando si los baños van a ser necesarios y tal y cual. Dice que no vas. Que no va a estar en medio de lo que es tu gameplay regular, pero la higiene va a ser parte del gameplay y va a tener efecto en ciertos espacios.
You're stinky and you've not showered in a long time, and you turn up to a truck stop and turn up to a counter, you buy food or whatever. There will be NPCs in the area that will probably start saying, like, oh, what's that smell? Like, what's that?
Claro, si vas apestando por ahí, va a haber NPCs en ciertas zonas que te traten mal o que digan vaya pestazo que llevas y tal. Ese tipo de cosas.
For the last few days. So yeah, the NPCs will react to you, and it might even get to the point where you might get refused service if you are particularly bad. So that also kind of ties.
Claro, que incluso puede que lleguen al punto de rehusar el contratarte, ¿no? Por lo guarro que eres.
If I come in and I smell, I'm sure there'll probably no issue. Like there might be a couple of comments here and there, but they're not going to stop you from, like being served, like getting food or whatever like that. But if you come into like a fancy establishment on, say, like Microtech, and you walk in covered in mud, like your clothes are full of holes, you absolutely reek, then they might just tell you to go away. So it's something to keep in
Claro,
mind.
si por ejemplo vas a un sitio elegante de Microtech, si vas a un sitio por ahí de tirado, igual te dejan pasar igual y tal, pero si vas a un sitio elegante de Microtech y tal, puede que no te dejen pasar o que te larguen fuera.
Experience,
si no te lavas.
immersive experience that we're creating.
Si llevas toda la ropa llena de
How
barro
in
y
the
tal.
world are you going to communicate to the player what their funk index is?
There's not going to be a funk meter, if that's what you're asking. I think it will just be a case of like things like dirt and wear are going to be a lot more visual, right? And they're going to be very noticeable. If you've gone and like rolled around in mud, then you're going to be covered in mud. Like if you are out for a long time and your armor's worn, it will start to get like maybe a couple of holes in it. Like clothing especially, it'll get like holes in it, rips in it. It'll look kind of like filthy and like faded and things like that. So that'll be super obvious. Hygiene, we're not going to have things like stink lines on, and like I say, hygiene and isolation isn't going to like affect your gameplay. There'll just be comments here and there of just like, what's that smell? And at that point you might be like, oh yeah, I've not showered like in the last like 10 play sessions I've had. Maybe I should, next time I'm on my ship, just quickly pop in there and have a wash. So yeah, no plans for a stink meter or visual stink lines coming from your character, nothing like that.
Claro, que sí podremos ver nuestra ropa desgastada, con agujeros y tal, que eso sí lo vamos a ver si llevamos barro y tal, pero que no va a haber, con respecto a apestar y tal, no va a haber grandes interrupciones de juego por ir todo lleno de mierda, pero que será alguna cosa que hagas para poder entrar a algún sitio, ¿no?
Other means of carrying incapacitated bodies, perhaps a fireman carry maybe, the dragging can take pretty long for longer distances.
Yes. Yeah, we feel the same way about dragging. It's obviously great to be able to sort of drag your body out of fire.
La posibilidad de poder cargar a la gente a hombros en vez de hacer el arrastre sí va a ser algo que vamos a tener. Y dice que sí.
But long distances, and also, to be honest, when you're trying to pick someone and put them into the med bed, and further down the line, bounty hunting, shoving someone into a storage locker, cryopod, you're going to want to pick them up rather than be dragging them all over the place. So yeah, we really want that. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but it is something we want to do.
Ya no saben cuándo va a ser, pero es algo que definitivamente quieren hacer.
Oh, you're muted, Joas. Oh, we're not hearing you. Nope. We've lost you.
Oh.
Gone.
All right. But just keep trying to talk until we hear you.
Mime it.
He's wanting to talk about restraints and...
Oh, restraints. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, like restraint.
Still lost you.
Restraining is a system that we're definitely currently actually looking into.
You
We're
didn't
talking about-
charge your headset. You didn't charge your headset before the show. Cardinal fail. All right.
So I can cover if you can hear me.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, restraining is something we're looking into at the moment, and obviously Chris mentioned bounty hunting, so bounty hunting is going to be pretty difficult if you can't tie someone up in some fashion. So we don't know what restraints are going to be yet in terms of, is it going to be zip ties, is it going to be handcuffs or anything like that, but, you know, you're going to want to be able to restrain someone's arms and legs so you can, you know, not let them escape. We had a quite funny moment in the office actually where I was like, oh, I'd just be fine with hands. And, you know, obviously doubting myself. I'm a big guy. I'm not very fit. Like, if I got on the floor and someone had tied my hands together, I might struggle to get up. But Joe has very kindly demonstrated how easy it was to just stand up, no problem, with your hands behind your back. So I was like,
yeah.
yep, okay. Oh, you're back now.
I'm back now. Cool.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Looks like the technical designers having technical issues. Yeah, I didn't hear at all what you were saying, but yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I was just quickly talking about some of the conversations we had around restraining and your lovely demonstration of how easy it is to get up with your hands tied behind your back.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the idea is you're going to restrain them arms, legs, so they can't escape, and then we'll tie that into body carrying, into bounty hunting, so you can put them maybe not.
Claro, dice que una de las cosas del llevar cuerpos o llevar, pues, el tema de Bounty Hunter, cuando tengas una persona maniatada, querrás tener soluciones para poder llevar a esa persona, ¿no?
Bump all the way back to your ship. You know, they might not survive the trip. You know, it reminds me of the Wild West days where, you know, someone would get dragged by a rope behind someone's horse. We probably don't want that.
No, we're a bit more civilized than that, aren't we?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Depends when you ask. While your mic is still working, Joas, what sort of attachments are planned for FPS weapons in broad terms? Adding foregrips, underbarrel weapons launchers, or expanding some existing attachment options. We've talked about it in the past, but not for some time. So why don't you give us an update of what the current plan is?
Right, so we definitely want to add more weapon attachments, and something that we have like down the line that's coming is bipods, so that you would be able to get a bit more accuracy while being stationary and firing. So you can sort of...
Claro, dice que quieren, ¿qué pasa con los accesorios de las armas? Que si vamos a meter más, que se nos puede hacer eso, se nos pueden hablar de eso, ¿no? Dice que sí, que definitivamente una de las queremos meter más accesorios. Uno de ellos es un bípode para poder tener más precisión cuando estés apostado.
Attachments as well. Like, we don't necessarily just want to add more weapons, but more attachments, and the attachments should like alter a bit how either you use the weapon or how the weapon functions. So
claro, dice que a la hora de meter nuevos comportamientos de armas, no necesariamente hacerlo a través de nuevas armas, sino también de accesorios que modifiquen los comportamientos de las armas o de cómo disparamos nosotros esas armas, o del retroceso, o de cosas, varias cosas, ¿no?
Have you considered just all grenade launchers? Just nothing but grenade launchers, top to bottom?
something that we've like talked about internally, but we haven't done any designs for non-barrel grenade launchers right now.
Claro, poner
I mean,
lanzagranadas debajo del cañón, que es algo de lo que hemos hablado, dice, pero que no es algo que...
You know, so maybe we'll take
no
it
es algo de lo que hayamos discutido todavía, no dice.
necessary yet.
I'm going to take this. We're about halfway through the show. I want to remind folks that this is the actor feature team. Questions about the look of clothes, armor, beard, stuff like that, that would be the character team. Basically, character team are what the player character looks like. Actor feature team is what the player character can do. In an overly simplistic. There's some areas where they cross over and stuff, but for the most part, keep that in mind with your questions. And then if you're still asking about spaceships, you're way off. A whole other team entirely. All right, here's one. This one might have been from me, but it wasn't. Will we be able to select standard loadouts? It is very annoying to decorate your character, die, and then have to spend another 10 minutes hanging guns on them.
So we're not planning any sort of loadout editor?
No, bye, Chris. Nope, bye.
Oh, okay. I'll see you next week.
Dices cuando vamos a tener algún editor de personaje, de poder guardar configuraciones, y dice, no estamos planeando nada de esto y tal, y dice, pírate, Chris.
Lockers, you would go up to a locker fully attired and just be able to dump what you're wearing into it, and that would retain, your sidearm, all your sort of equipment, grenades, ammo, etc. So all the time you put into just equipping yourself up, you'll be able to save that and store it in a locker. And obviously, if you've got multiple lockers, then you can have multiple loadouts that you can return to every time. That gives you a great bonus if you've got a bigger ship or eventually larger HABs. We also do want to support the notion of outfits, but they're going to be more sort of geared towards clothing, primarily because with armor lockers, the idea is sort of one suit per locker. So you just, what's in that locker is your loadout, so to speak.
Gotcha.
But with outfits for clothing, you could buy an outfit from a shop, come back, go up to your wardrobe or locker, just dump that into your locker. And then when you return to it, you might say, oh, I want to equip that outfit again. And again, you might want to customize it. So maybe you bought 2 outfits, but you like half and one more or whatever. So the idea there is that you'll be able to customize clothing outfits. And that should be within an interface that's like tied into your locker. And yeah, just so you're aware, so lockers, it's meant to be very tactile, the player interaction system. We want to use that throughout the entire game.
Esto es interesante. Dice que para nosotros poder tener una configuración, no siempre tener que estar equipándolo todo a mano y tal, sino si tenemos, porque que podremos personalizar estilos de vestimenta o ropa que queremos llevar y asimismo con armaduras, pero almacenarlo como a través de un casillero, ¿no? Que podamos meternos ahí en ese armario y abrirlo y que nos equipemos ya con las cosas que tengamos ahí, ¿no? Más que el mítico sistema tradicional de números y de posibles configuraciones con un inventario enorme, ¿no?
Way to get sustenance in an area where we won't be able to remove our helmet without dying. People thinking about Pyro.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any plans at the moment, but I always say never, and that very much ties into the eventual plan we have for the player suit and player armor. Is that conversations we've had in the past? I think again mentioned it last time I was on here. Was it almost is going to be like a mini spaceship by the time we're done. It's going to generate power and things like that. So potentially, as long as it doesn't just completely take away from the fact that you do need to find food and drink to survive and consume that, then we can maybe look into, some sort of suit integrated system. But it's something that we haven't talked about at all, so don't take that as me promising that's what you're going to get.
El tema de poder alimentarse con un casco y tal son cosas de lo que hemos hablado un poco, de la posibilidad de tener un sistema que se integre en las armaduras, porque también hemos hablado de plantas de potencia en las armaduras, etcétera.
And something that we always say is that planning is part of the core game loop. You always need to make sure that you eat and drink before you go into these situations. So you're not just going out, oh, I'm a little bit hungry and thirsty, I'm going to go on a,
Claro, dice que también hay que tener en cuenta el hecho de que tú tienes que prevenir, o sea, que la idea es que el parte del game loop es que tú seas previsor a la hora de cuando vayas a hacer una operación, de que te alimentes bien, de que bebas bien, que también tiene que tener en consideración eso, o sea, que hay varias cosas a tener en cuenta, ¿no?
In hostile environments is what I'm trying to say. So if you're obviously in 0G and, there's no atmosphere, then taking off your helmet is just a big no-no in general. But say if you're on a planet that's super hot or super cold, and hopefully you're wearing the right gear for that anyway, again, part of the planning loop. If you take your helmet off for a few seconds while you just have a quick drink or a quick something to eat, it's not a big deal.
Claro, si estás en un planeta muy frío, muy cálido, si te quitas el casco durante unos segundos, no es un tema importante, o sea, no es un gran asunto, o sea, podrías hacerlo, ¿no? Pero si estás en EVA, pues suerte, mucha suerte, ¿no?
Subject of helmets here. What's the plan for being able to remove your helmet and put it back on again without needing to go into inventory, store it in a backpack, or drop it? People have seen the ATC bind a key, and now there's blood in the water.
That is actually something we're working on at the moment. So we've been playing around with this a little bit in game currently. So the idea is that you'll be able to remove your helmet as an actual action. So you can potentially either carry it under your arm, so it's kind of like tucked under your shoulder a little bit, or it will be attached to an actual, almost like a clip or something on your suit that's basically like a little item port. So like how we do with the weapons and stuff at the moment, which I think is currently located on the hip. We've been moving it around a little bit just to see where best fits. But this just means that, you know, your helmet is still available, but you've still got your hands free to do everything that you want to do. So, you know, you can eat, drink, you know, get into a fight in a bar or whatever, while you've still got your helmet handy. So again, that kind of ties into what I just said, where it's like, you can quickly take your helmet off, put it on your belt or whatever, have something to eat and drink, quickly put it back on again without needing to go into the inventory and start, you know, moving things to and from your backpack or dropping it on the floor or anything awkward like that. So totally, and you know, obviously as well, you know, actions to kind of move this around. Obviously, we're potentially going to try and find a key binding for it, so it's nice and easy to use, and then.
Vale, que sí, que el casco pues va a tener una acción propia para hacerse y que incluso pues que se pueda poner aquí encima en lo que es el brazo y demás, que hacer eso pues más fácil, ¿no? Más razonable, no guardarlo en la mochila y tal como se hace ahora que.
I'll take a note. Hang on.
What can you tell us about EVA T2 and 0G push-pull? Will there be decoupled EVA?
So first thing to mention is probably good news. It's very much in development. We've got quite a few people working on it right now. Big change coming for EVA is that it's going to be requiring fuel. So the idea is you haven't got.
¿Qué nos podría decir de la actividad extravehicular en Tier 0? Os digo en Tier 0, en Tier 2. Y comenta, vamos a tener desacoplado, ¿no? Y dice que ahora mismo que está muy verde el tema de cómo lo tienen, o sea, que no han evolucionado todavía tal. Pero que una de las cosas que va a haber es que va a haber gasto de combustible.
Decoupled part. It's very much a part of both 0G and EVA. If you imagine you're clambering slowly over a surface, that's going to be the general sort of traversal whilst you're in 0G. But you will be able to sort of push off, and that's going to be whether you're moving between different objects or if you're on the surface of a ship, going from one ship to another.
Claro, dice que serás capaz de impulsarte a través de, o sea, de impulsarte, ¿no? No solo de lo que es a través de impulsión, sino con tú mismo físicamente, con tirar y empujar para poder moverte entre dos objetos, por ejemplo.
Moving until something else occurs to prevent me from that movement carrying on. But we're also going to be introducing sort of skimming across surfaces. So the slow sort of ponderous clambering movement is going to be one part of the 0G push-pull, but you're also going to be able to just push yourself along the surface. And that's, it's the equivalent of a sprint in 0G, but it's going to be using sort of Newtonian decoupled physics to achieve that. The EVA itself, it's changing a little bit. So I'd say it's sort of decoupled light. And before you get sad, I'll describe why I say that. So the idea is you will thrust in a direction. You can then release the input and stop that thrust. You will continue indefinitely in that direction. If you start to look around, again, you keep going in that direction. But if I turn and then I give another thrust input, I will start to thrust in that direction. And where that differs from the decoupled mode, you could be, traveling one direction, you turn 90 degrees, and then you start to thrust in that direction. You've still got that momentum in the original direction. We wanted to not have that for EVA. We want more of a sense of the Iron Man flying sensation. So you will have the equivalent of coupled flight whilst you're reorientating yourself and changing the thrust vector. But once you've released the thrust input, then you go back to the sort of decoupled model. So it's kind of a halfway in between.
Vale, que está diciendo que es un punto medio entre el acoplado y el desacoplado a la hora de hacer el movimiento NEVA. De que cuando nosotros corrijamos la dirección, en caso de una nave, si nosotros hacemos desacoplado, pues seguimos manteniendo el momento, la inercia, ¿no? Aunque giremos y tal, seguimos manteniendo parte, ¿no? Y en este caso, cuando nosotros estamos haciendo giros o maniobras, estamos manteniendo el acoplado, ¿vale? Y cuando mantenemos una dirección, pues sigue avanzando, ¿no? En ese desacoplado. O sea que es una mezcla entre los dos.
Onto the sight itself, but these reticles should have the appearance of projecting far forward of the weapon like a laser sight.
Yes, definitely. This is like if you look at some of the games that are being released right now, most of them have this parallax effect on aiming down sight with holographic sights and so on, and it's definitely something that we want to do. it's just a matter of priority at this point. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like us as the design team do a ton of competitive analysis to make sure, especially with the weapons, just to make sure that we're kind of like on top of, because obviously as new games come out, tech gets better, weapons start to feel better. We obviously want to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of making our, you know, FPS experience feel good as well. So this is something that we've looked at quite recently and just started to discuss like what it is we can do to start making improvements to them, because they've not really been from a technological point of view. We've not really had much engineering work on the actual visuals of the sites themselves for a long time, probably several years at this point. So it's just, again, we're trying to get the core systems in game right now. So this is just kind of something to come later as you know, almost like polish.
Okay. Here's another frequent one we get every time you're on the show. Any update on when we might begin to see non-lethal weaponry added to the game?
So yeah, there's no timeline on when we want to deliver the first weapon. I know we've got at least one in the pipeline that has the capability to knock people out. Again, like you mentioned earlier, you know, we're trying to prioritize or trying to, you know, make things for Squadron 42 as a priority, and that's kind of like where the team's leaning at the moment. So there's nothing yet been kind of like PU appropriate right now, and this is probably more something that when we start to do the PU bounty hunting stuff, this is probably when you're going to see this come along. And from a design point of view, we can make this right now, and it's just a case of making sure that we've got this.
Vaya, pues es una pena, ¿no? Porque están preguntando de cuándo vamos a poder tener las armas aturdidoras. Dice que cuando nos pongamos con el Bounty Hunter, que está desde el punto de diseño, lo podríamos hacer, pero que ahora no es el momento. Ya sabéis que ahora mismo los equipos, bueno, están volcados, ¿no? La mayoría de equipos están volcados en el Escuadrón 42 y bueno, de alguna manera, pues, bueno, de alguna manera no, este equipo también está trabajando primeramente para Escuadrón 42, ¿no? Y luego pues todo lo que van haciendo se va filtrando al PO.
Remember that, the one that does chain lightning, the ATSCAV. When we actually put Electron in, Electron is that a wonderful damage type actually, where we can kind of pull a few different levers. So it's all electromagnetic or electrical damage type, but you know, the electromagnetic side will interrupt, you know, actual electrical systems. We've got the actual damage that it does, physical harm to you, where it basically like burns, and then we've also got the stun capability as well, where it's like actually, you know, almost like a taser, where it's kind of like knocking your sensors out. So that's kind of what we can utilize and potentially what this sort of weapon.
Claro, está hablando del ASCAD, del rifle de francotirador que hay ahora mismo de rayos, que por una parte tiene una parte que quema y por otra parte que aturde, ¿no? Y que podrían utilizar esa tecnología ya puesta para poder llevar el tema de las armas aturdidoras.
It completely bypasses the complexities of the medical system you have built, undermining player skill and knowledge.
That's a good question. To start with, I'd say no, we're not happy. Not just in general, with the medical gameplay, should just clarify that. And there's quite sort of a complex sort of ecosystem here that the majority of like the medical gameplay isn't there yet. That there's, you know, we want a larger loop that involves like death of spaceman, so that there's consequence to death, which then, you know, informs you the consequence to being injured. There's, you know, armors. In fact, JJ can probably talk about that in a little bit. You know, what we want to do with armor specialization and whatnot, and you know, additional items we can release. So no, we're not happy with it. It is something that we're keeping a close eye on. We're absolutely listening to your feedback, and we're aware that it's not something that, you know, people are necessarily happy with either. We have looked at making a few little tweaks here and there. So like for 317, for example, like we heard that, and we could tell that the injury stuff just wasn't coming through enough. So we've made it more likely you're going to start to see injuries. So hopefully, you know, the use of those med guns become more important. There are also other issues regarding like just dying straight away, like quite a few. Like I was really surprised at how many of those we had. We've knocked a load of those out of the park, thankfully.
Bueno, estamos contentos con el gameplay médico que tenemos ahora y no para nada, no están contentos y tal. Dice, sí que es cierto que la 317 hemos avanzado un poco en el tema de que las heridas, pues el cómo adquirimos las heridas o los sangrados o o la facilidad, la relativamente facilidad con la que se muere para poder recibir asistencia médica, que todo eso pues se está trabajando para tal.
Summarize where we want to take medical gameplay next. Not necessarily like not committing to this order. This is going to be first. This is going to be next. But as a general like a shopping list of things you want, where you want to take medical gameplay next.
Sure. So going back to like that full loop we want to establish. This, I guess, is a little bit of a step away from the medical gun, but just in general, we want costs for using medical beds, and that's for regen and also for healing injuries. And you might think, well, why is that so important? Well, it introduces the aspect of resources being required and also players being able to charge for the use of their medical beds. So, if you wake up in hospital, you get charged. If you wake up a player own ship, then you can get charged for that or for using the services. So, you start to make money out of these things. I think as well, again, this is sort of a bit of a divergence, but it's within the same wheelhouse. At the moment, the drugs we've got...
Si no hacemos aquí si no hacemos en la nave de un jugador y tal, pues a ver, que va a haber diferencias, ¿no? Que al final pues ¿a dónde se quiere llevar este gameplay? Pues el tema de que se necesiten suministros, si nosotros tenemos que llegar a una cama de un jugador, pues que ahí haya business, ¿no? A diferencia de la cama de un hospital.
A lot more introduce things like basically after effects, consequences for taking stuff, the coming down from the high of being able to shoot people repeatedly and whatnot. And then obviously, there's the whole death of spaceman thing where, as I said, it gives you a reason not to die. You don't want to die because eventually you'll die forever and lose a lot of your stuff.
Bueno, al final le está preguntando dónde quiere llevar el gameplay médico y la respuesta sencilla es que estamos todavía en pañales en el tema de la medicina, ¿no? Que es básicamente lo que está diciendo, y que falta todavía que la muerte de un hombre en el espacio, ¿no? Ese documento de diseño pues empiece a cobrar vida el asunto. Es que de momento no hay...
Slowly trying to specialize the armor in different directions, so it's not just armor is armor, heavy is heavy, light is light. We're trying to push things in slightly different directions. So you might actually have, we've talked about having a support line of armors where it's like, oh, okay.
Este señor me cae bien. Este señor, yo creo que es el tío de Zig que le ha dado a like a mi pregunta en el Spectrum, porque está diciendo de que sí, bueno, nos estamos moviendo a especializaciones de armaduras y demás, que vamos a tener pues armaduras ligeras, no solo pesadas o tal, sino que...
Easily, we've talked about, almost like bespoke backpacks, which might have special functionality for like holding like medical fluid for the med gun. And we even talked about super kind of like a couple of ideas for what we can do for,
claro,
say,
incluso el poner, efectivamente está comentando de tener una mochila, pues que en la mochila podamos llevar fluido para las pistolas.
And again, there's more iteration to do on that too. But then the heavy is a bit more like, what we've kind of been calling the battle medic, where it's like, you're wearing heavy armor for a reason, you want protection. Or it's, the big heavy suit that you want to go and rescue someone from, say, like a really hostile environment as well. And that might have some special functionality, because like...
Claro, dice, por ejemplo, en el caso de una armadura médica pesada, pues que nosotros lo llamamos el Battle Medical Suit, ¿no? O Battle Medic Suit, que es el el traje de médico de batalla, que pues quizás quieras rescatar a una persona de un entorno complicado y pues tendrá funciones especiales para eso, ¿no?
The big heavy suit might actually be, from a support side, might actually still be quite good in combat. So lots of ideas floating around there, and obviously it kind of ties into, how medical gameplay is kind of pushed, further in this kind of more specialized direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's talk salvage. Now I want to preface this by saying that we're probably going to have a dedicated segment to salvage on ISC in the near.
Vamos a hablar del chatarreo y el asuntaco, pero que dice que vamos a tener un asunto dedicado, un espacio dedicado a esto en el futuro, pero ¿qué nos puedes decir acerca del estado actual de la chatarra?
Really exciting feature. It's something that I'm working on currently, and you're going to be able to salvage the hull from a ship. So, like I'll give you one of the examples, right? So you're in a dogfight with another player, you blow up their ship, and you've taken some damage to your ship as well. You're gonna have the multi-tool, and you'll be able to jump out of your ship and salvage the debris from.
Me ha molado la hostia porque me recuerda, o sea, es que lo ha dicho tal cual con el tono con el que hablan los presentadores antiguos de la tele, ¿sabes? Dice, you gonna have your multi-tool, you gonna jump out you gonna jump out your ship, and you gonna have your multi-tool. Vas a tener tu multi-herramienta y vas a hacerle así al casco.
Yeah, it provides you like a way to repair your ship, or also gain some resources from destroying someone else's ship. We do have quite a lot of ships in our game, so it's it needs to look. You need to be able to salvage pretty much every ship in the game, and it's what we're working on.
So it's a technical
Ya
challenge.
dice, básicamente podrás chatarrear la mayoría de las naves en el juego. Eso es lo que estamos hablando, ¿no? Sacarle lo que es la piel a tiras. De momento es lo que hay. Pero bueno, oye, no está mal. Poco a poco, chavales.
Or tech has advanced on the newer ships that has kind of like made them potentially look a little bit better when they take damage and things like that. So there's some catch-up work to do on both like.
El salvage será como cuando mojas una galleta en la leche. Si te pasa, se rompe.
Actually restore the paint. You just restore like the base metal layer where it's like, oh, this is super cool. I've been through a dogfight and I've patched myself up. I can see exactly where I was hit previously and where
There's some
I've
scarring
repaired.
on your
Exactly.
ship.
So when you're going to start seeing people landing at space stations and stuff and whatever, you're going to actually be able to see like, oh, this guy has been through some stuff, like it almost tells a bit of a story about where they've been. So it's really, really exciting. I'm for sure going to be messing around with it when it goes live.
Yeah,
A couple follow-up
can't
questions.
wait for people to see more. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, a couple follow-up questions from the chat. How are you going to salvage enemy ships when they despawn 10 seconds after you blow them up?
Yeah, it's one of those technical challenges that we're working on.
Y claro, ¿cómo vas a chatarrear naves enemigas cuando despawnean 10 segundos después de que las revientan? Y dices, eso es algo que tienen que resolver, obviamente.
The streaming will come into play. Will you be able to salvage ground vehicles as well as spaceships?
Yeah, you will.
Vale, también vehículos de tierra vamos a ser capaces de hacerlo.
I'm mostly using the ships when I'm testing it in my test levels, but yes, you're able to do it on ground vehicles as well.
I think Sorry, go on.
It's basically using the damage map system.
Yeah.
So anything that can be like currently, if you shoot the ship on the wing, you'll see a big hole on the wing, and we've expanded on that system. And without going into too much technical detail, it's we've made it more consistent, like so that like players will see the same type of damage holes, and also made sure that you can't cheat with the damage map.
No, I don't know what that means. What do you mean can't cheat?
Like basically, we've moved it from it being a CPU handled thing to from a GPU to a CPU. So it's I don't want to go too much into technical detail, but networking basically it works over the network now.
There's a big conversion that had to be done that basically was showing what you were doing on a surface, and it would show for someone else.
Claro, dice que tiene que haber para que el salvage tenga sentido también, todos tenemos que ver los mismos daños y demás, que hay un tema que hay que hacer, que hay que trabajar ahí. para que todos veamos lo mismo, ¿no? Que es un tema de redes y tal que tienen que currarse, que tienen que reconvertir ahí unos sistemas.
We talked about medical game. We've talked about medical gameplay, which was one of the big features the actor feature team worked on. We talked a little bit about where it's at, whether we're happy with it, and what we want to do in the future. Let's do the exact same conversation, but for inventory before we run out of time here. How happy are you with inventory right now?
So happier, not satisfied, I'd say is accurate. There's a lot of sort of quality of life things we want to introduce. That unfortunately, we didn't quite get to with the last release. Some stuff we are actually actively working on. I've seen some improvements that I'm quite happy about. I will delve into a few things that I'd like to see, I guess. But before I sort of talk about quality of life stuff, I think it's probably good to say that where we are now with inventory is just kind of the first step. Like, you know, the overall design is that everything's physicalized. So at the moment, you know, you've got the location inventory and you've got the ship inventory that they're a step up from what we had previously, but they're sort of like a magic bag of holding that you can magically access, you know, from anywhere within those volumes. But we definitely want to move away from that. We want it to be that, so we're in a ship, you've got a point of access where you go to, so, you know, you're rummaging around your glove compartment or your large storage bin, or something that's built into
Claro, sigue manteniéndose en el tema alimentario. Dice que están contentos con ello, pero no están satisfechos. Ya sabéis que lo está diciendo, ¿no? De que lo de la bolsa mágica de abrir cosas y ya está, que eso van a huir de eso, se van a alejar de eso, y lo que vamos a tener es inventario físico en el sentido literal de la palabra. O sea, de que vamos a tener las cosas si tenemos armadura, tendremos en esta ocasión de armadura. Tenemos una pitámbulo, lo tenemos en la mesa de la cocina de la nave, ¿no? O sea, que es el inventario físico de verdad.
that at some point, and that ties in heavily. Over 317, we're allowing you to move ship items, weapons, and whatnot within the inventory. That is absolutely a stopgap. When physicalized cargo comes along, we're going to sort of strip that away, because what you have in your ships at the moment is meant to be representative of, you know, the lockers you have on board, the storage bins, the storage compartments that are separate from your cargo. So the idea there is that when we start to introduce those lockers, you know, the ship inventories we have become less important. We start introducing the external inventory interfaces and the ship interiors. That effectively replaces those magic bag of holding things. And, you know, longer term with HABs and, you know, hangers at some point, that then replaces the need for the sort of the magic bag of holding we have for the location inventories. So am I happy with where we've reached? Yes, we've got a long way to go though. In the shorter term though, we've got a lot of sort of quality of life things we want to introduce. So I know some people have mentioned the idea of, you know, the stuff around your feet, dragging and dropping directly from what's on the floor around you, not just what's in your inventory and what's attached to you. So we definitely want to introduce that. I think move all is quite a happy sort of, everyone wants that.
Wait, did you say move all?
I did say move all, yes. Have you heard it before, by any chance?
Huh? So sorry, just move all. I just went to like a weird happy place. Continue.
So yeah, cool. So we definitely want to introduce that, and also sort of a quick move. So just to give an idea there, move all would be move everything from one inventory to, you know, from one side of your one pane to another. So if I'm in my location, I can click move all and drag a bunch of stuff immediately into my ship inventory. That's living the dream. Looting as well. But quick move, we want to do the same thing but for one item, so you can quickly just move that without having to drag. Stacking, we're aware that people want stacking. We're really sorry we didn't get that in the first implementation. It was a host of sort of back-end problems that really sort of got in the way, but with, you know, we've got lots of back-end upgrades coming, and that's going to make that a lot easier. At some point we will do sort of client-side stacking as well, so those two combined will allow us to stack a lot of things, but I don't know when that's coming, I'm sorry, but it's definitely something we want to do. Mission items, like at the moment, they're still sort of put in your magic pocket. There's another less nice word I could use for that pocket, but yeah, we want it to be tied into the inventory, so you're putting those mission items, you see them in your your personal inventory as a result. And those missions are tracking the fact that they're in the inventory now, not in sort of an invisible item put on your body. And yes, search is another one we definitely want to do. Again, I don't know when that's going to come along.
Está hablando de muchas cosas que van a venir para el inventario, ¿no? De moverlo todo, o sea, un botón que lo mueva todo de un lugar a otro. El botón de mover rápido, de que hagamos un clic en el objeto y se mueva rápido directamente. No tengamos que arrastrarlo. Están hablando de gestiones del inventario, de mejoras que van a meter que son lógicas también. La acumulación de objetos, ¿no? El stack. Que dice que bueno, que el stack, o sea, lo otro sí que va a venir como es un TM, pero lo otro va a tardar más. O sea, lo del stack y eso, que parece que va a tardar más, pero... Y también está hablando del tema de... A ver un momento.
You're familiar with the term prison wallet.
I've heard it. Yes, I may have used it on one or two occasions. Yes, I
Vale, es eso, ¿no? Que va a haber mejoras en el inventario también, como buscar cosas en el inventario. Poder también tener esa clase de acceso a cajas o lugares, ¿no? En lo que son las viviendas o también en los propios hangares. El hecho de que realmente el inventario de las naves que tenemos ahora es producto de la suma de los supuestos compartimentos que tendrá la nave, que luego nos tendremos que acercar a cada compartimento, ¿no? Para poder hacer el tema para poder interactuar con el inventario. Eso parece que ha dicho. Al final del inventario va a ser lo que vamos a ver del inventario, pues será algo que veremos con el tiempo, ¿no? Como resulta. Vamos a ver lo que están diciendo, que están despidiendo.
42 that you were going to get out of this. I know because I saw the relief wash over your face when that happened. Not so much the case. For folks watching home, remember that ISC is currently on hiatus. It's our normal quarterly hiatus. We'll be back on April 28th, if I remember the date correctly. If that's a Thursday, that's the date we're going to be back. And there will be no SCL next week because it is a company holiday for Easter and stuff. So the company gets the 15th off. So no show for next week. But we'll be right back here in 2 weeks with I can't remember who's on the show at that point. It's 2 weeks ahead, and that's farther than I normally think. So for Johnny and Joas and Chris, I'm Jared. Take care. Keep an eye out on the robertsspaceindustries.com website for more details on Alpha 317. I don't know what to tell you. Everybody's working really hard to get it out, and we want it out there as much as you guys want it on the live servers as well. I mean, all things in their time. So take care. See you later. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
thank you.
Yes, bye.
Sí, ha dicho que vuelve en 2 semanas.
Can't believe you said I've used a prison wallet.
I hope there will be memes. We'll see.
Ahí está. Dice que vuelven en 2 semanas, pero porque dice que... A ver. Lo que viene siendo Semana Santa, el 10 de abril. Claro, o sea, para lo que es esta semana que viene se va de vacaciones el equipo. Es lo que ha dicho, se va de vacaciones. O sea que... Hostia, pues... ¿Que ha salido PTU ahora o qué? ¿O este es el jueves? No, este es el jueves. Vamos a ver aquí un momentito rápido, chicos. A ver qué pasa, porque, hombre, yo creo que es una putada, ¿no? Que no abran el PTU para todo el mundo. No está tan mal, o sea, yo lo abriría para todo el mundo, para que la peña lo pruebe en Semana Santa. En Semana Santa me rejaría los huevos a 2 manos, si soy ellos. Descansaría a gusto y luego volvería con fuerzas y tendría... Yo creo que sí, ¿no, chicos? Porque, o sea, se pueden hacer cosas, ¿sabéis? ¿Cómo que hace 2 horas? sea, no sabemos, ¿no? No sabemos. Voy a meter el este, chavales, el destacado, para que quede destacado ya. Y luego pues os quede para el YouTube yo tenía. Comentaba eso el tipo, ¿no? Comentaba que el inventario pues se vienen grandes cambios como la búsqueda, todo eso, ¿no? O sea, cosas de las que realmente no han hablado de nada nuevo. Todo lo que ya sabemos, o sea, todo lo que nos han comentado son cosas que ya sabíamos. No ha habido ninguna novedad realmente. O sea, son todo cosas que ya hemos hablado por el canal, a través de los insights. O sea, no ha sido nada.